All right, so make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, and go to cwicmedia.com, cwicmedia.com, and at the top there, subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, Cwic Week. So, some very big Latter-day Saint news today. The church has acquired from the Community of Christ the Kirtland Temple, along with several Nauvoo properties and several historical documents, including some that are written by Joseph Smith, and the manuscripts from the Joseph Smith translation, as well as some other personal items of the Smith family and Joseph Smith. The total transaction was $192.5 million. Now, before we bring on Stephen Pynnaker, who I believe broke the story before the church even put this out on the church newsroom, I just want to say this is very good news, obviously, for Latter-day Saints, but there's really something about focusing so much on your heritage and on your history and your founding. As we look back toward the events of the founding of the church, it strengthens our identity, even our truth claims, and brings us closer to the otherworldly experiences had by Joseph Smith and some of the early church members. And that is crucial for us to identify and tie ourselves to those events. The first vision and all that happened at the Kirtland Temple, Moses, Elias, Elijah, all appearing and bringing the keys of their dispensation and of their stewardship with the priesthood. This, of course, looking at the Kirtland Temple, is what gives that vessel its greatest value. And anything that is a personal item or that was a physical manifestation of inspiration, such as the Joseph Smith translation manuscripts, or even a portrait of Joseph and Emma and letters between Emma and Joseph and others, tie you back to say, hey, this was real. Point our eyes and our hearts and our minds back to that founding and to those miraculous events that opened up the last dispensation. Now, Stephen Pynnaker, my guest, has a unique perspective on all of this because he knows so many people in the Latter-day Saint community as well as in the community of Christ, including many leaders. So I thought bringing him on would be important to get his perspective on this, even though he's not a Latter-day Saint or a member of the Community of Christ Church. I think there's a very good message here. I hope you stay tuned. Here we go. All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson. I'm your host. We have brought back Stephen Pynnaker from Mormon Book Reviews, who apparently, Stephen, you may have been the one who broke the news here today on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints purchasing the Kirtland Temple and many other assets from the Community of Christ.
Yeah, this is still a developing story. My phone's been exploding, but basically I had somebody reach out to me this afternoon about 2:23 my time. That would be Eastern time in Florida. His name is John Hychek. Now, this is the thing. My platform broke the story, but the person who broke the story was John Hychek, who's one of the most important restorationist historians and collectors, who really has an impressive collection of relics and has really been tied into the restoration for a long time. Now, what makes him so fascinating is he's a Strangite. And this is kind of the advantage of Mormon book reviews, is that we talk to all the different groups within the restoration. And that builds a lot of goodwill, because a lot of times these people are ignored or they're just not taken that seriously. And I say, no, this is a very, very important person in the restoration. And he's also very controversial. But he reaches out to me and says, Steve, he said, I got a new story that's going to be even bigger than your Joseph Smith photograph story. I'm like, really? I said, what's this all about? And I said, because I'm literally going to tape an interview at 2:30. And for my Utah Interfaith Forum channel with Monica, my new co-host. And I'm like, he's like, Steve, we got to do it, or maybe. And I said, well, it's going to only be 45 minutes long. I said, and he said, well, maybe we can do it afterwards. And I said, you know what? Let's do it now. So, and he thought that'd be a good idea too. So I hop on my Zoom and said to my guests and to Monica, I'm like, Wendy's a great person, my guest. Can you give me a little time here? I need to tape a real quick interview. I don't go live myself. Like I do, like you kind of just tape stuff typically. So I was like, I need to tape something really quick. So we did a 15-minute interview, and John Hychek was standing in Independence, Missouri, at the temple lot with the Community of Christ Temple behind him, announcing that the Community of Christ is selling the temple, the Kirtland Temple. And I was just like, "Are you wait?" And I at the time like, "Okay, this is a big story here, and I'm trusting my guy here that I've developed a friendship with to say, okay, you know what? I trust you. I believe you. I haven't heard anything from the church." And I said, "Okay, John, who bought this church?" He said, "Is it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that bought it?" He said, "Yes." Now, the reason why John was in the know on this in many ways, first of all, he's got a lot of great connections. But second of all, 15 days ago, he had offered $100 million for the site, because I guess there are rumblings. It's like he said, it wasn't for sale, but I knew that it could be sold. So he got together financing to make a $100 million offer for the property, which essentially would pay off most of the pensions that are owed by the church. And he made an offer, a written offer to the Community of Christ 15 days ago, and they acknowledged the receipt of the proposal. Okay,
$100 million. Do we know who was financing this?
I would have to ask John. I didn't have the time. Now, John is a person with a lot of connections and knows a lot of people. He is a collector. He's pretty wealthy himself, so he has I guess you could say he has the potential connections to be able to put something together. So I guess he must have felt the pulse or something going on that, hey, it looks like they're going to be selling this thing. And in his mind, he felt it was important that it stay outside of the Utah branch's hands and within what you could call the more Midwestern-based sects of the restoration, because there is a genuine fear from a lot of people from these communities, Community of Christ, and also all the other groups that are out in the Midwest, that the church would buy the Kirtland Temple and then close it to the public and make it a regular temple. Now, apparently in the press release that would later be coming out says that they don't intend on doing that. So that's one concern now that's allayed.
I'd be surprised if they changed it. I'd be really surprised.
Yeah. But that was the genuine fear that John had about it, and so he was like, we need to save this from happening. So basically I was really surprised. Now I have a lot of connections in the Community of Christ, and, about 7 years ago, they paid $35 million for the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon from the Community of Christ, which was in their archives. Okay. Now, at the time, I was like, okay, good. This must have really helped pay off their debts and maybe put them on solid footing. Well, I talked to someone a couple of years ago. I'm talking to some of my sources in independence, and they say, no, Steve, that just bought them time. That church is in deep financial trouble.
And that's what I understand, yes.
And I'm hearing rumblings about Graceland University, which is their BYU, that their school is financially not well off at this point, from my understanding. Well, I have sources that have indicated this to me that are very reliable, that they're on poor financial footing as a university. So basically, this whole entire church has deep financial obligations for their pension fund, which is the big thing. Now, a couple of years ago, I talked to one of my sources in Community of Christ, but I've been having this conversation for a couple of years now about, hey, will the Kirtland Temple be sold? Because it looks to me like this could happen. And one of the people who has the pastor of one of the largest congregations in that church told me, says, no, that won't happen anytime soon. Our church has some properties in California of campgrounds that are worth millions and millions of dollars, and they would sell those before they would sell the Kirtland Temple. But apparently, the financial situation got so untenable for the Community of Christ, they had no choice but to sell this property. Now, I understand this is going to help them stabilize them financially, but it's just kind of, I do feel kind of sad for them too, because, I have a lot of friends in that church, and they were very proud to be caretakers, that custodians,
of course,
of historical sites. Now that begs the question, they own the red brick store in Nauvoo. They own some of the most important historic properties in Nauvoo. They own the plot where Joseph Smith and Hiram and Emma are buried. Is that next? I think they're going to hold on to that last, because the Smith family.
Well, let me give you a list here. I've got a list of what was purchased and what went along with the
I haven't had a chance.
That's out now, because as of this recording, the Church News put this out after you did. But here's what it says. The most significant properties are the Kirtland Temple. This is all part of the transaction here. The Smith family homestead, the Mansion House, the Nauvoo house, and the red brick store.
See, my phone's been exploding. It's just been constantly focused on the Kirtland thing. I had no idea. This is.
Yeah. So now there's more. There's documents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So also significant documents and artifacts include manuscripts and the Bible used in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, 7 letters from Joseph Smith to his wife, Emma, John Whitmer's History of the Church, original portraits of Joseph and Emma Smith, the cornerstone of the Nauvoo house, the original door of Liberty Jail, and a document with the title of characters. Remember that one?
Well, yeah.
Characters, which may contain a sample of inscriptions from the gold plates. So, yeah, there's quite a bit here that is going along with all of this.
Yeah, and just so you know, I just basically broke the story, and then as soon as I break the story and release it at 3:15 today, I'm taping an interview at 3:20 with somebody about a food pantry in Utah. And so I had to do that interview that I had an obligation to do. So I'm just hearing this for the first time, and I thank you for sharing it, because then, of course, my phone's been exploding because everybody's talking about the Kirtland thing. But I saw that there were other items there. This is just so you know, folks. Maybe just to give the context to the audience here, because I'm tied in with the Mormon scholarly community and the historical community. I'll be giving a presentation at Mormon History Association in June, and I've done it at Whitmer, so I'm plugged into the scholarly community. And these sites, of course, and I don't even think you need to be a scholar to understand the significance, not one, of the Kirtland Temple, but also the significance of these very, very important properties in Nauvoo. This was their pride and joy. This was they took great pride in their historic sites. Group like Lachlan Mackay and Barbara Walden are wonderful people and done a wonderful job as caretakers of these important things. And I think we have to say this: we need to honor the community of Christ and the people of the community of Christ who kept the Smith legacy. That's the Joseph Smith's family's church, right? Lachlan Mackay is a direct descendant of Joseph Smith, and he's a good friend and has been on my program a couple times to talk about the Joseph Smith photo. And I know that this really probably hurts that they had to do this.
Sure. Let me add one more thing. And I knew this was in there. I don't know why it's listed above on this. Sorry, but from what you're saying here. But this is a really important part too. The manuscripts of the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, are also part of that. See, that's just so that's and a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints don't understand what this really is. This manuscript we've always had in our scriptures in the King James version of the Bible, these little blurps, right? Yep. That, you look in the footnotes and there's a word, and most of it's completely insignificant. Some of it's something. And then you have the Joseph Smith translation, which we did have parts of leaving Nauvoo that came west. And most people think that's the Joseph Smith translation. It's like, it's nothing. It's a tiny little part. Even the study aid that we have for the scriptures is a tiny little part of the entire manuscript. Which has now been, it looks to me like it's all of the manuscripts. Okay. That were put together with that. And by the way, there's a price on this, which this is pretty rare for the LDS Church to put this out here. But the price was $192.5 million for everything. Okay, so this is an important. Not only is this an important historic event within the context of the restoration, this is an important historic event, period, because this is a massive amount of historic properties being sold for record prices. Just so you know, that manuscript, Book of Mormon manuscript, was the most expensive document ever sold. It broke all the records, and I imagine there are some records that are going to be broken in these historic transactions as well. So just even say that again. I wasn't sure what you said there. What I was saying is that when the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon, they paid $35 million for it. Yes. In the historic world, like in the secular world, that was the most expensive document ever sold for its time. So for just in the context of collectors in historical items, that kind of set the bar of like a very important document. So in the same thing with these historic sites, look, these are priceless in many ways. All these artifacts are priceless in some ways. The printer's manuscript's priceless. The Kirtland Temple is priceless. But here we now have actually put a monetary value on these priceless objects. It would be like the Vatican selling a bunch of their stuff. It would be just stupendous, right? So this is just a major news story in and of itself. And so I think that, it is important that, the people of the community of Christ, I just want to say to you, I know you're devastated today and you feel really bad about what happened. I'm hearing my phones exploding from community of Christ people who are sad and feel very hurt by this because they took great pride in maintaining and preserving the historic sites of the restoration. And thank goodness they did. Yes, and that's why I feel we need to honor them at this time, because I know that on one hand, sure, you got a lot of this money, but now a lot of your sacred spaces and sites are no longer in your hands. And that has to be hard, but this is the thing. Now, just to give you the context of the inspired, so we have the Joseph Smith translation, is what you guys call it. They call it the inspired version. Okay, that's their nomenclature. And what happened is that for a very long time, there was mistrust of that translation by the Utah Saints. Mhm.
And it wasn't until the 1970s, there was a scholar, and of course, this is all last minute, I'd look it up, but there was a scholar, a Mormon scholar, who started engaging the manuscript of the inspired version, and actually wrote a paper saying, you know what? This is a reliable, what they've put out is a reliable translation. You should not look at it like it's some kind of view it with suspicion that it's been corrupted or that they manipulated this, that they did a good job maintaining that translation. And so I know a lot of Latter-day Saints. Matter of fact, I know I have a Latter-day Saint publisher that recently came out with their New Testament with the Joseph Smith translation. And this is a Utah-based group, Rob Meldrum's group, you know, and
Is
so
that Hawking?
yeah, Ed Hawking, yeah, who I've had on. And so the Joseph Smith translation or inspired version, you know, depending, is now making itself into the pages of mainstream Latter-day Saints works. And so now you have this wonderful thing, this wonderful group, this wonderful people, this wonderful organization who love Joseph Smith, who love the restoration, who love these historic sites. I know this is a day that you will go down in your history as a day that you feel bad about, but this will also be the opportunity for your church to be able to kind of stabilize itself and be an important voice of the restoration going forward into the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we have more added to our Sola Scriptura.
In one sense, yeah, that's becoming de facto canonized by many Latter-day Saints, that they're integrating the Joseph Smith. And so we have to honor the work of the community of Christ. And again, I think this is so important because you're a mainstream LDS church. A lot of you are just live within the Mormon corridor, but there's a lot of Mormonism out there throughout the world you've never heard of, but I get to talk to all of them. And that's really, I think, one of the key things is that John Hychek, who's the one who broke the story. I want to give credit to John. He came on my platform, but he's the one that broke the story on Mormon Book Reviews. And he felt that he could come to my platform to talk about this story. And that's because I've made a point to go and be respectful and honoring of all the different voices of the restoration and not dismiss them. I've had people, why do you talk to those little groups? I'm like, man, because they're just awesome people and they have their own history and they have their own relics and they have their own stories that need to be told too, to fully, totally understand the story of the restoration, the story of Joseph Smith and his church as well in Utah. I mean, in Independence, Missouri, right? I mean, Joseph Smith's church, of course, is claimed in Utah too, but of course the family claims it in Missouri. So this also goes to show, actually, in one sense, a positive step. Because for decades, they wouldn't talk to each other. The prophets wouldn't talk to each other from the different churches. They hardly acknowledge each other. There was always this tension and this rivalry between these two groups. And in one sense, you could see how now over the course of the last few decades, they've built a trust with each other. They've been talking with each other. And now we can actually see, in one sense, a positive thing where the two largest branches of the restoration were in conversation with each other. They trusted each other. They negotiated in good faith, and they were able to get this done. So in one sense, it's also a story, I think, of reconciliation and friendship. And hopefully this will cause there to be closer relations between the community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Well, looking at the press release, the LDS press release, it looked like that was the tone that they had put out.
Yeah. So I think that was really important. So I have no idea, because just so you know, when we taped that, we didn't have a lot of this information. We just knew we had a story. And so I almost think it looks like to me it's almost simultaneously, if not, I may have beat them by a little bit on breaking the story. And I have a feeling that maybe the reason why they released it when they did was because the cat was out of the bag and they wanted to get ahead of this story. I don't know. Maybe they did plan on releasing it today. Either way, it was broken almost simultaneously on NBR and in the church newsroom. So this is an important place. You know, I hope people would check out my channel, Mormon Book Reviews, on YouTube. We've broken many, many, many stories here on NBR, and it's become a trusted source for people. And so that's
I've got it here, and you know, we've got the video that you put up right here, and
so there she is.
Go any further than that, but so exciting stuff. So people ought to go over and take a look at that, and I'll go ahead and put a link in the description box for that, so that people can go over there and see the story that you did.
So the very first time that this story was described and identified was here on Mormon Book Reviews, and I want to thank John Hychek for coming to MBR and offering the story to me first. And I'm honored and privileged to be friends with that man. He is not a man without controversy, but I'm a man without controversy that has controversy too, including being censored by AI, by Google and YouTube, which you have to talk about sometime as well. But again, that's the key thing, is we want to be respectful of people. And when you're respectful to other people and you're kind and you're willing to listen, and you don't try to get yourself ready, battle ready, because, well, they're from that group, I can't talk to them. Once you realize that you can talk to these people, then these opportunities present themselves that really, in one sense, it's the importance of having conversations. The Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had important conversations that were probably really delicate, and they had to negotiate a lot of things, but it was done in good faith and goodwill. And if anything, that's maybe the most positive thing we can take out of that story.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Stephen, thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming on and giving us the perspective that you have, because you've got so many of those contacts with the Community of Christ. I do know that a lot of Latter-day Saints are going to be pretty happy right now, but we move forward, and
it's, and you know what,
like I said, I'm grateful that these historic properties have been well taken care of, and there's so much rich heritage and story there to these things. So
there it is. And and that's why I really emphasize about honoring the Community of Christ, because for years, people, Latter-day Saints, would come from Utah and they would go into the Kirtland Temple and they'll be like, we're going to get this one day. We're going to get this one day. And that really hurt the feelings. I mean, trust me, I've heard this many times from Community of Christ people in their historic sites, and that really hurt them a lot. Mm-hmm. So while you're happy as Latter-day Saints, remember, these are your cousins, and be respectful of them, and don't spike the football too hard. Honor them and acknowledge the custodial role they played for the restoration, and also take that into account too, because I think it's really important that you be kind to people when they feel hurt as well.
Good message. Appreciate it, Stephen.
All right, man. I'm glad I was able to come on your show, man. It's always a blast, dude.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, later.